Most older men have no idea how this one daily habit shapes their health after 60. Urologists now reveal the truth about masturbation and what it means for your body, brain, and future. And the biggest regret? Not knowing it sooner. They say wisdom comes with age. But for many men over 60, there's one area where silence has cost them more than they realize. I'm talking about masturbation. It's been treated as taboo, ignored, or dismissed as something you outgrow. But the truth is, it plays a critical role in your health, your confidence, and even your future. My name is Dr. Mohit Kara. I'm a urologist and professor of men's health at Baylor College of Medicine. I've spent over 3 decades helping men just like you men who never expected that something so private, so personal, could be the key to reclaiming their strength, clarity, and vitality. Today, I want to share the 7 most important secrets about masturbation that older men often discover far too late. Some of these may surprise you, others may explain things you've quietly struggled with, but all of them come from real lives, real science, and real regret. So if you're ready to hear the truth without shame, without judgment, then you're in the right place. Let's begin. Secret 1. Mindless masturbation can lead to numbness and ED. Let me begin with something few men ever speak aloud. Over the years, I've had hundreds of older men sit across from me in my office, their eyes down, their voices low, unsure how to begin. But when they finally opened up, I heard the same quiet truth again and again. They said things like, "I still do it, but I don't feel much anymore." Or, "I can't finish unless I do it the exact same way." Some even whispered, "It's like my body forgot how to respond." And the truth is, they weren't broken. They were just trained in the wrong direction. Years of quick, mechanical, disconnected self-pleasure had reprogrammed their nervous systems, rushing through it with tension in the shoulders, always using the same motion, the same visual triggers, the same rhythm. It had created a loop. Their brains had learned to associate arousal only with that pattern. And our brains are quick learners. Over time, sensitivity dropped, erections lost their strength, intimacy with a partner felt unfamiliar or too slow. The body began to expect stimulation that was intense and artificial. Real connection? It felt distant, even uncomfortable. And then came the frustration, the shame, the self-doubt. I saw men who had once felt strong and alive now unsure of themselves. Not because they were too old, because they were unknowingly conditioning their bodies out of feeling. This pattern leads to what we now understand as porn-induced erectile dysfunction, or delayed climax. In some cases, even total loss of orgasm. These aren't rare, they're just rarely talked about. And worse, most men don't realize it's something they've done to themselves, not out of weakness, but out of habit. The cost isn't just physical, it's emotional. I've seen it in the way men carry themselves. They stop reaching out. They avoid closeness. They pull away from the people they love, not because they don't care, but because they no longer trust their bodies. And that withdrawal, it can spiral into low mood, into depression, into a quiet kind of invisibility. But the good news is this: the nervous system can heal, your body can relearn, but it starts with a different approach, one that is slower, more intentional, and more connected. Not just to sensation, but to who you are beneath it. Because masturbation isn't the problem. It's how we do it that matters. Secret 2. Not masturbating at all may harm the prostate. There's a common myth that circulates quietly among older men. It says that after a certain age, maybe 60, maybe 70, you're supposed to stop. That sexual activity, even alone, is no longer part of your life. That it's something to leave behind, like an old jacket. I met a man named David, 68 years old. He came into my office because he was waking up 5, sometimes 6 times a night to urinate. He felt pressure in his pelvis, a kind of fullness he couldn't explain. He thought it was just aging catching up with him. When I asked, "When was the last time you ejaculated?" he looked at me like I'd asked a strange question. "It's been years," he said. "Not since my wife passed." I thought that part of life was over. What David didn't know, and what many men don't know, is that your prostate doesn't retire when you stop being sexually active. It keeps working. It keeps producing fluid. And when that fluid isn't released, it doesn't disappear. It builds up inside your body, creating pressure and stagnation. That's what we call prostate congestion. And it's more than discomfort. Over time, it creates inflammation. That inflammation can lead to urinary issues, urgency, weak flow, pain, and even increase the risk of long-term complications like infections, or more seriously, prostate cancer. There's real data behind this. A Harvard study that followed nearly 30,000 men found that those who ejaculated more frequently, at least 21 times a month, had a significantly lower risk of developing prostate cancer. This isn't theory, it's science. And David, once he understood what was happening, he didn't go back to old habits out of lust or loneliness. He did it with care, with intention. Slowly, his symptoms began to improve. His sleep deepened. And something else happened. He began to feel more alive again. You see, the cost of neglecting this part of yourself isn't just a few restless nights. It's discomfort. It's medication you may not need. It's surgery that might have been avoided. And maybe even higher risk you never knew was there. You wouldn't ignore your heart or your blood pressure. Don't ignore your prostate. Secret 3. Shame around self-touch damages mental health. There's a quiet kind of pain I see in many older men. It doesn't always come through words. Sometimes it's in the way they avoid eye contact when I ask about intimacy, the way they laugh nervously or change the subject when the word masturbation comes up. But underneath those small reactions is something deeper, shame that's been carried for decades. Many of you were raised in a time when touching yourself was seen as wrong, maybe even sinful. You were told it was dirty. You were punished or made to feel embarrassed. And though years have passed, those messages didn't disappear. They stayed with you, buried in your body, wired into your nervous system, shaping how you feel about yourself even now. The result? Disconnection, not just from others, but from your own body. You stop reaching for yourself. You stop acknowledging your needs. Not because you don't want to, but because you've been taught you shouldn't. That kind of conditioning doesn't just silence desire, it starves your spirit. And here's what most men don't realize. This emotional silence has physical consequences. Healthy sexual touch, even when done alone, releases powerful hormones that help regulate your mood. It lowers cortisol, your body's stress hormone. It boosts dopamine, which supports motivation and focus. It creates oxytocin, the hormone of connection and trust. These chemicals don't just make you feel good, they help you function. They help you stay balanced, calm, and mentally clear. But shame blocks all of that. When you carry guilt, even unconsciously, your body stays tense. Your mind runs quiet loops of stress and suppression. You lose sleep. You lose energy. You stop feeling alive. I had a patient once, 72 years old, recently divorced. He wasn't sick, but he was exhausted, distant, and numb. He told me he hadn't had sexual activity, not with someone else, not alone for over 10 years. I just thought that chapter of life was over, he said. But what he really meant was, I don't know if I deserve to feel again. We worked together slowly. No medications, no pressure, just small steps to reconnect him to himself without guilt or expectation. And over time, something shifted. He began to sleep better. He moved with more confidence. He started smiling again. He didn't feel fixed. He felt human. Shame asks a heavy price. It takes away joy, connection, and vitality one quiet inch at a time. But here's the truth, your age doesn't disqualify you from being whole. You're never too old to feel safe in your own skin. You're never too old to touch yourself with dignity, with care, with purpose. Secret 4. Testosterone is stimulated by sexual activity, even solo. There's something I wish every man over 60 could hear clearly and without shame. Your testosterone doesn't just decline because you're aging. It also declines because your body is no longer receiving the signals it needs to keep producing it. Testosterone is not just a hormone, it's fuel. It drives your energy, your strength, your confidence, your mental clarity. But when you stop living like a man who still wants to feel alive, when you stop engaging with your body, stop touching it, stop caring for it, your system quietly adjusts. It assumes you no longer need that vitality, and so it pulls back. I remember Frank, a 73-year-old retired firefighter, a man who once carried himself with strength and presence. When he came to me, he seemed deflated. I just feel like I'm fading, he said. His testosterone levels were low, almost at clinical deficiency. He hadn't been sexually active in years, not with someone else, not even alone. I don't see the point anymore, he told me. But that belief that there's no point is where the real loss begins. You see, when a man stops connecting with his sexual self, his body starts to scale back. Blood flow slows, muscles weaken, sleep becomes fragmented, even mood and memory begin to dull. not because of aging, but because the body is responding to inactivity. We started small with Frank. A few minutes a day of mindful self-touch. No goal, no rush, just presence. Over time, his energy shifted. His posture improved. His voice carried more strength. And his labs showed something incredible. His testosterone rose. This isn't magic. It's biology. Your body is built to respond to engagement. Even imagination, intention, and gentle stimulation can remind your system, I still need this. When you ignore your sexual self, your body listens. But when you reawaken it, your system begins to respond. It brings energy back to where it once began to fade. Low testosterone is not just about sex drive. It's linked to heart health, muscle mass, mental clarity, and even longevity. You don't need a partner to keep your system alive. You just need to stay connected to yourself. Because the moment you stop believing, you can still feel, that's when your body starts to forget how. Secret 5. Erectile function is a use it or lose it system. There's a quiet lie that many older men start to believe. It sounds harmless, even practical. If I'm not having sex, then I don't need to worry about erections. I've heard it countless times. But here's the truth. Your doctor might not have told you. Erections are not just about sex. They're a marker of overall health. Let me explain. Your erection depends on blood flow, smooth muscle integrity, and nerve sensitivity. And like any part of the body, if you don't use it, it weakens. The tissues lose elasticity. Blood vessels stiffen. Oxygen flow drops. Over time, the system atrophies, just like any other muscle left unused. I once treated Harold, a 69-year-old man who hadn't had an erection in over 5 years. Not because he couldn't, but because he hadn't tried. His wife had passed. He wasn't dating. He assumed that part of life was over. But when I examined him, I realized something important his body hadn't shut down from age. It had shut down from silence. The penis is not just an instrument of pleasure. It's a signal of vascular health. When you stop experiencing erections, whether from sexual activity, arousal, or even non-sexual stimulation, your body begins to interpret that system as unnecessary. The result? Reduced nitric oxide production, hardening of soft tissue, and the gradual breakdown of function. And this isn't just about mechanics. As the body stops responding, the mind follows. Confidence slips, self-worth takes a hit. You feel less connected to the person you used to be. And with that disconnection comes a deeper emotional withdrawal that few people see coming. But the good news is, your system is not permanently lost. You can remind your body that it still matters. Regular, healthy stimulation, even solo, keeps blood flowing, tissues oxygenated, and neural pathways active. Think of it not as a performance, but as a practice. A way to tell your body, I still need you. I still care. Because the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to restore. Not just physically, but emotionally. Secret 6. Porn changes your brain, but you can take control. This one's not easy to talk about. Even the word makes some men shift in their seat. But if you're still with me, I want you to hear this clearly, without judgment or shame, because it matters more than you think. Pornography has changed, The kind of material available today is not what most older men were first exposed to in their youth. It's faster, more intense, and designed to overwhelm the brain's pleasure system. And over time, your brain adapts. Each time you watch high-speed, highly stimulating content, your brain releases dopamine, the chemical of reward and motivation. But too much dopamine too often causes your system to dull its sensitivity. You begin needing more stimulation, more novelty, just to feel the same. What used to be exciting now barely registers. And this isn't just about taste, it's about wiring. I've met men in their 60s and 70s who still turn to porn not because they're addicted, but because it feels like the only way to feel something. Many live alone. They're not chasing excitement, they're chasing connection, or at least the memory of it. But what they don't realize is that the very thing they're using to cope is slowly stealing their ability to feel. Over time, porn can lead to what's called porn-induced erectile dysfunction. Your body responds only to the screen, not to reality. Sensitivity fades. Intimacy becomes awkward. Solo moments without it feel dull. And worst of all, many men begin to believe they're broken without ever realizing what caused it. But here's the hope. Your brain can heal. Even after 60, your nervous system still has the ability to reset. But that reset begins when you step away from artificial highs and reintroduce your body to reality, to presence, to stillness, to imagination. Some men take a 30-day break, others ease in more slowly. The method is less important than the intention to rebuild your brain's connection to touch that is grounded, simple, and real. This isn't about giving up pleasure, it's about reclaiming it. And if that part has dulled, the next truth may cut even deeper, because while porn can affect your brain, isolation can affect your entire being. Secret 7. The most dangerous mistake. Isolation. Of all the risks older men face, one stands above the rest, not because it's loud, but because it's quiet. It doesn't show up as pain or numbers on a lab report. It shows up in the spaces no one sees, in the silence, in the distance, in the slow withdrawal from your own body. I'm talking about isolation, and not just the kind that comes from living alone. I mean the kind where you stop being touched. You stop touching yourself. You stop feeling connected to your own skin. Not out of choice, but out of belief. This idea that after a certain age, you're supposed to stop. That intimacy, sensation, even presence no longer belong to you. I remember Peter. He was 76, retired, polite, put together. But when he spoke about his life, something in his voice was flat. He told me he hadn't been touched in over a year. Not a hug, not a hand on the shoulder, nothing. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even sad. He had simply accepted it, like it was a chapter that had closed. But here's what Peter and so many other men never realized. Touch is not a luxury. It's a biological need. Your body still craves it, even now. Your nervous system still depends on it. When touch disappears, oxytocin drops, stress hormones rise. blood pressure climbs, sleep quality fades, immune function weakens, and the brain, it starts shutting down emotional circuits slowly, gently, like dimming the lights in a house no one lives in anymore. Over time, numbness sets in, not just in the skin, but in the soul. And often, it starts in the bedroom. A man stops touching himself, not because he doesn't want to, but because he no longer feels he should. And that withdrawal sends a message to the body. Connection is no longer needed. Emotion shuts down. Vitality dims. And what's left is a quiet grief, a slow fading of the self. But this isn't inevitable. You are not meant to vanish. The act of touching yourself gently, respectfully, intentionally is not about lust. It's about life. It's a way to say, I'm still here. It tells your body, your mind, your spirit that you still matter. I've seen men return to life, not through medicine, but through reconnection. When they begin to reclaim the right to feel, to engage with their own bodies again, they begin to walk taller. Their voices carry more weight. Their spark returns. And if that's something you've been missing, then what comes next may be the most important step of all. Conclusion. If you've stayed with me until now, I want to speak to you not just as a doctor, but as someone who has spent a lifetime listening to the quiet fears and deep hopes of men just like you. What we've explored today isn't just about masturbation. It's about memory, identity, connection, and healing. You've learned that mindless self-pleasure can train your body into dysfunction, while total avoidance may harm your prostate and increase risk over time. You've seen how shame picked up long ago can silently wear away at your confidence, your hormones, even your sense of self. You've heard how testosterone isn't just something that fades with age, but something that responds to how fully you're still living. You've discovered that erections are not a performance, they're a sign of vitality, blood flow, and vascular health. You've learned that pornography may be changing your brain in ways you never intended, and that reconnection starts by choosing presence over pressure. And finally, you've looked into the most dangerous mistake of all: isolation. Not just from others, but from your own body. From the soft truth that even now your skin still wants to feel, your heart still wants to open, and your life, your real life, isn't over. Let me leave you with something simple. You are not broken. You are not invisible. You are not too late. Every system in your body wants to feel again. And the first step isn't complicated. It's not a pill or a program. It's just 10 quiet minutes a day. I call it the golden protocol. 10 minutes of presence. No screens, no goals. Just you, your breath, and a willingness to feel without judgment. A hand on your chest. A touch on your skin. A moment of truth. For some men, it becomes a morning ritual. For others, a return before sleep. But in almost every case, it becomes a turning point. Because when you treat yourself with care, not urgency or shame, but care, your body listens. It softens. It remembers. And when that happens, something long forgotten wakes up again. If this message spoke to you, take a moment now, subscribe, share it with someone you care about, or simply leave a 1 in the comments so I know you're still here, still choosing, still alive, because you are. And what you do with that still matters.